It's been a few days since Kevin Durant essentially confirmed his trade request with the Brooklyn Nets, and he has already revealed the destinations that he wants to go to in the offseason, and the Raptors were unfortunately not mentioned. But in today's video, I'm going to go through why the Raptors can still make this trade happen and attract the superstar to the city of Toronto. Let's get into it. Welcome NBA and Raptors fans, it's Jacob here back with Amateur Hour Sports for another Toronto Raptors YouTube video. On this channel, I bring you the greatest coverage and analysis on the latest Toronto Raptors news, and I'm doing it all throughout the offseason. So if you like what you see from today's video, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You can help us on the road to 12,000 subscribers, and if you find yourself enjoying this video along the way, be sure to drop a like to get that extra little bit of support. Let's get to 400 likes on today's video. It's a high number, but I know that we can get there. Today's video is all about Kevin Durant yet again, because this is the hot topic for Toronto Raptors fans. I mean, it has to be the hot topic. It is very rare for a player of this caliber, a superstar, former MVP like Kevin Durant, just being available for trade. Still, maybe not like in his prime in terms of his age, but based on the output on court from last season, this guy is like still in his prime. Now, he's clearly at the end of his prime at 34 years old, but for teams who have aspirations of going to win a championship next season, this might be one of the best pieces, a top 5, maybe even top 3 piece to have on your team, and that's going to attract a lot of interest. It's apparently attracting interest from the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, and the Toronto Raptors, of course, in particular. Now, on Tuesday, we spoke about what the Raptors would have to do to make this trade happen, and I'm still going to stand by the fact that Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, maybe salary filler, maybe a player like Thaddeus Young, along with 3 or 4 first-round picks, is the offer to beat. That offer is clearly beaten by the Boston Celtics if Jaylen Brown becomes available, but it is not exactly clear yet if the Celtics have made that player available, or if the Brooklyn Nets started the rumor that he was available to try to attract bigger players from the Raptors in terms of a trade, like getting Scottie Barnes to a trade, which, again, I'm going to reiterate, Scottie Barnes is not going to be a part of this deal in any way. But in the days since Kevin Durant spoke with Joe Tsai, Brooklyn Nets owner, it has been pretty much taken that Kevin Durant wants out. Kevin Durant is going to be traded in the offseason. It seems like that is what he wants to happen. Brooklyn, I guess, can hang on to him and try to get the maximum value out of him, but I find it unlikely that he's going to stay in Brooklyn in the offseason. All the odds makers, Vegas, have it as likely that he stays there, but that cryptic tweet, I mean, not very cryptic, that subtweet from Joe Tsai on Twitter, where he essentially said he's going to stick with management, he's going to stick with coaching, does indicate that a trade is imminent. So, based off of that, Kevin Durant has actually already spoken about the destinations that he would like to go to in the offseason. The Boston Celtics, who I believe are the favorites to acquire the player, especially if Jaylen Brown is available, because, I mean, if they make him available, which I think there's a great possibility they do so, Brooklyn are going to make that trade because that is going to be by far the best player available for them to get. And as a result, Boston are favorite, and it seems like there's a little bit of mutual interest here. Kevin Durant has spoken about Boston being a desired destination for next season. And Kevin Durant, I mean, you know what he does. He loves going to a place where everything is already built for him. All he has to do is show up to an already great team and make them even better. That's just kind of, I guess, for lack, I mean, maybe this is the correct term. I was going to say for lack of a better term, just seems like Kevin Durant wants to take the easy way out a lot of the time. He doesn't want to stick through the bad days with the team, and I get it. Maybe he's 34 years old. Regardless, this is a great Celtics team who just made the finals. It pains me to say it, but they are a great team. Kevin Durant puts them over the top, and I believe it makes them the best team in the NBA. So I can see why Kevin Durant wants to go there, but it is all going to come down to if they offer Jaylen Brown. The Nets seem to have some different ideas here because they asked for Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think that's just kind of your initial offer. You highball as much as possible so that when you kind of slowly meet towards the middle, maybe you're starting at a higher point and you end in the middle on a higher point. I don't know. I think that's how every NBA negotiation goes. You always start with that just to see. It's like the Utah Jazz with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Utah Jazz start with, all these players plus 5 first-round picks essentially just to start, and then maybe a team like Minnesota will actually say yes. So I mean, you got to ask. If you don't ask, you will not receive. But obviously, they're not going to get that. Maybe they will get Jaylen Brown, and that makes him the favorite once again. But another team that Kevin Durant has spoken about is not the Toronto Raptors, who, again, I said in the intro, have unfortunately not been spoken about. That trade can still happen. I'll explain why in just a second. But Kevin Durant has also spoken about the Philadelphia 76ers being a favorable destination for him to go to. And you can understand why this is a favorable destination. I mean, they just have the guy who came second in MVP voting in Joel Embiid. He was also All-NBA second team because Jokic made the first team. I guess it makes sense because they're both centers. But regardless, Joel Embiid is there. Kevin Durant playing with Joel Embiid. Kevin Durant also playing with James Harden. That makes a lot of sense. Hey, Kevin Durant, James Harden, that'd be great. Could you imagine if those two plus Kyrie Irving played on the same team together? They'd be unstoppable, but they'll have to settle for Joel Embiid instead. That is going to be a force. The only problem with Kevin Durant going there is, for the Celtics, I can see a reality where the Celtics have a trade that makes sense, Jaylen Brown. For the Sixers, it's not quite that simple because, James Harden is not going to go back to the Brooklyn Nets. That is just not going to happen. Could you imagine? And also, other than that, they're not trading Joel Embiid, of course, because that's who Kevin Durant is going to play with. So now you're looking at the other pieces and you're like, okay, a package around Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. Well, that just doesn't sound very good for the Brooklyn Nets. Tyrese Maxey is a quality player, like a very good ascending young player. Is that somebody that can be the centerpiece for a Kevin Durant trade? I don't think so. And as far as I am concerned, Tobias Harris is like, you should receive compensation for taking that contract. That should not be like a desirable piece to acquire from a trade. I can't really see a pathway in which the 76ers make that happen, which is why we circle back to the Toronto Raptors, because if Jaylen Brown is not on the table, then the Raptors have the offer to beat with Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, maybe Thaddeus Young. Bobby Marks made a mock trade where Thaddeus Young was involved along with a bunch of picks. This is a trade that I think really suits the Toronto Raptors. It puts Kevin Durant with Van Vliet, Barnes, and Siakam. And if I can keep those guys and get Kevin Durant, I'm going to have to do that. I understand keeping the core together, but that is something that I'm going to have to do. And as far as Kevin Durant in terms of his desires, where he wants to go, he wanted to go to Phoenix, and for some reason, the odds makers have Phoenix as a very high candidate to actually still acquire Kevin Durant. I would stay very far away from betting on that because, we've been over this. No DeAndre Ayton means no deal can really happen with the Brooklyn Nets because, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson is not enough to get that done. So the Raptors could still have the best offer available. And as far as Kevin Durant in terms of his demands, he hasn't really made it clear that he wants to go to a certain team, or necessarily he hasn't made it clear that he does not want to go to the Raptors. And we've seen in many cases before, like Kawhi Leonard. He was here. We were wondering if he would want to play here. He played his heart out all season, helped us win an NBA championship. And if Masai had catered to his demands and just traded everything to get Paul George, then Kawhi would have stayed in Toronto. He was open to staying in Toronto. Masai ultimately made the right decision, in my opinion, not going all out to trade for Paul George. The Clippers did that. They're reaping the I guess you could say benefits of that one because they have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard now, but the Raptors didn't want to do that. It doesn't mean that Kawhi Leonard didn't enjoy his time in Toronto. And these days, things are different. The stigma against the city of Toronto and wanting to play there, I would say, is mostly gone. We still struggle to acquire and attract those high-quality free agents, but through a trade and players that end up playing here. Like, people love this city. People love playing in Toronto. Like, when is the last time you had a player just absolutely complain about playing here because it's Canada, because it's Toronto? Like, that is just something that doesn't really happen anymore. So if we were to trade for Kevin Durant, and I imagine the relationship between Durant and Brooklyn Nets ownership is not very good at the moment. I think that's an understatement here. I don't really think he's going to have a ton of say in where he goes. Obviously, Masai Ujiri would have to have a conversation with KD himself before pulling the trigger on any sort of trade to make sure, hey, if we acquire you, we want to go all out to win a championship. Are you all in on this team? Are you all in on this city wanting to go win that championship? If the answer is yes, then I would say pull the trigger on that trade. Obviously, you'd have to have the discussion, but I think that Kevin Durant would welcome the opportunity and relish the opportunity to play with talented players like the All-NBA player in Siakam, the All-Star player in Fred VanVleet, and the Rookie of the Year in Scottie Barnes. But perhaps the bigger question isn't necessarily Kevin Durant up front wanting to play here or not wanting to play here. I'm not saying that, It's his preferred destination here, but I'm also not saying that he wouldn't be open to playing here. I don't think that he would see this as a negative. If the Raptors were to acquire him hypothetically, I don't think he would see it as a negative going there. I think he would see it as a positive because there is a great group of players that can play around him. Where I see the problem, and this is becoming more apparent here, this wouldn't necessarily stop me from making this trade, but it is absolutely something to consider from the Raptors, Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, the rest of the Raptors front office. Something to consider would be how Kevin Durant has been with his previous two teams. I mean, he's obviously about to leave the Brooklyn Nets in a pretty precarious situation. Like, it's a pretty awful situation developed as a result of Kevin Durant, really. I mean, he wanted to bring in Kyrie Irving with him. I mean, that was a free agent signing, so it's ultimately up to the Brooklyn Nets. And he also wanted to bring in Steve Nash. He advocated for that hire of Steve Nash as head coach, and now he's the one who wants to get Steve Nash fired. Like, a lot of demands here for a player who is on the tail end of their prime. I mean, it's been a very, very long prime and very successful prime, but on the tail end of a prime, how much are you willing to cater to this individual? How much are you willing to really reshape your team for this individual? Like, we had Kawhi Leonard, and we refused to shape the team to his demands by acquiring Paul George, as I mentioned earlier. So I don't think we're going to be able to do that with Kevin Durant. So if we don't really adhere to all of these demands from the superstar player here, how much is he really going to like playing here? And if maybe after 1 or 2 years, if there is maybe no NBA championship in those 2 years' time, will Kevin Durant still want to play here? Will he want to leave? Will he kind of light the fire and leave it behind with our organization? That is something that you absolutely need to consider. Obviously, the time in Golden State was successful. There was 2 NBA championships and 2 finals MVP for Kevin Durant. But when he left, it was pretty tumultuous. Like, he was getting into fights with Draymond Green. Apparently, there was some spat in like a parking lot. Whole bunch of stories, a whole bunch of things beyond basketball being caused by Kevin Durant. I know people would say like Kevin Durant just wants to go out there and hoop. I mean, he seems to cause a lot of drama where he goes. Is that something the Raptors want to take on in terms of baggage by acquiring the player? I would say ultimately, I'm still in the mindset I want to make this trade because this is a player that just does not become available very often. And it is so hard to get a player of this caliber on your team that you can take the risk in order to do it. But a big thing that needs to happen beforehand is a conversation with the Raptors front office and Kevin Durant to see if their goals are aligned, see where his head is at, see if he would be willing to really go to war for Canada, go to war for Toronto and for his teammates here. Understand that this is a team. This is not about him. This is not about, him doing specific things individually. This is about the team going to win an NBA championship. And if all those things are aligned and all of those things are in check, I still want to make this trade. If you can avoid trading Barnes, Siakam, and Van Vliet and get freaking Kevin Durant, then my goodness, you go out and do that. But the Raptors have some big competition with the Boston Celtics. They want to offer Jaylen Brown. We're not going to outbid them, but that is up to them if they want to break up that finals team to go and do that. If they don't want to break it up, the Raptors might again still be the team to beat. So how do you guys feel about Kevin Durant now? Do you still want the Raptors to trade for him amidst all this drama, or are you content and even happier just to stick with the current core that we have? Let's hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please be sure to drop a like to support the channel even further. When you drop a like, it lets YouTube know to recommend this video to other people who have similar interests to you. It really helps grow this video and grow the brand when you like, and it only takes you a second to do that. And make sure, if you're new or if you've just not done so already, that you subscribe to Amateur Sports to help us on our road to 12,000 subscribers, and I'll be sure to give you the greatest coverage and analysis on the latest Toronto Raptors news in return, all through the off season and into new seasons, the next season, and all the other seasons as well. I'll see you next time for another video.